Nightmare Chapter 3. She sits in her home office chair, anxiously tapping her pen against a blank notepad while staring at a blank document on her computer screen. She has work to do, a new novel to write, but she finds it hard to gather her thoughts. The words just won't come. Her mind went through shock and is still trying to survive it. It took her some time to walk back into her own home after the episode, and that was all it was. What Dexter convinced her it was with little effort. An episode. After she sprinted to the grocery store and somehow managed to snuff her tremors enough to buy bacon without dropping all of her money onto the dirty supermarket tile, she stood at the entrance of her apartment on that welcome home. Matt and froze. Her body twitched. Her face was blank, thoughts introspective and endless. She was paralyzed, tormented by the fear that she would hear the ring from behind the apartment door. She must have been standing there for an hour or more, because eventually Dexter burst out, frantic, his phone pressed so hard against his ear it could have shattered against his face. When he saw her, he let out a sigh of relief and engulfed her into a bear hug, forcefully sucking her back into the apartment with him, back in with those demons. "Oh, where were you? You left your phone here. The grocery store is only across the street. It should have taken you only 10 minutes. Where were you? You worried me." There was a... She'd choked on her words, struggling to speak, let alone breathe. When saliva resumed its function and wet her tongue, she was able to explain. The photograph with its twitching eyes and the bell chime. The ring! She didn't tell him about the dream, her nightmares. She thought it would make it all seem so contrived, like she was forcing the hallucinations for attention, to backtrack on progress. "Babe, none of that was real," he'd said with a sigh. "That was just an episode, like a bad dream while you're awake. You're stressed and freaked out about the poster, and stressing yourself out is making you go a lil crazy." She both hated and loved how carefully he tiptoed around the subject of her mental integrity. Like she was a rubber band stretched so thin and his hands were made of knives. After that, Dexter ushered her into her office and sat her down. He told her she had work to do, and that by doing her work she would feel better. "It's your therapy," he said. "Now write and only think happy thoughts. Just write your little heart out and don't stop." His hand was on her shoulder, and he looked down at her with such a genuine smile. The same smile that entered her life a year ago and made her pain stop almost instantly. And what was it that was causing her so much pain? She can't remember now. He smiled and she felt calm, and then he went to the gym. To his own world outside of this one. Happy thoughts. That's what Dexter told her. Happy thoughts like her boyfriend and ice cream and sunny days and botanical gardens and writing. Hence why she is where she is now. But happy thoughts don't create art. They don't let you bleed out best sellers. And so, while she thinks happy thoughts, her computer screen remains blank, the cursor winking back at her. To the left of her computer is the poster. The grim, printed face relentlessly watches her no matter where she finds herself in the room. She can feel its burning gaze sink into her cheekbone. She'd kept the poster hidden in her pocket, scared that Dexter might take it away if he saw her with it in her panicked state, and for whatever inane reason, she couldn't part with the thing that instilled so much fear in her. Instead, she told him she threw it out on her walk over. Gone forever. Or at least from his world. In her world, she now inspects it, seeing the crease lines from the tight folds cutting through the center of the face, separating the 4 hemispheres of those dusty features. Even compartmentalized, the face is horrifying. Her fingers tap the desk, soft at first and then loud like rattling bones. Her bottom lip is sucked so deep into her mouth, she feels the skin pulling at her chin. Finally, she picks up the poster but holds it at a distance, reading the words at the bottom with a grimace on her face that says, "I want to know. I want to read it over and over and over and over. I want it close but as far away from me as possible." The eyes on the page twitch toward her, searing into her with that grin and a wink. Startled, she claps. She crunches the poster like it's an accordion between her palms, and the sound of its destruction feels good. So she finishes the job, tossing the crumpled page into the waste bin at her feet. With triumph, the feeling of a weight being thrown off of her, she thinks, that should do. But her thoughts shift. Her hands find the keyboard of her computer like a bolt of inspiration just electrocuted her. Just entered through the top of her head and expanded throughout her limbs, controlling her arms like a puppeteer. Her fingers fly across the keys, a composition exploding in her skull, and if she doesn't transcribe it fast enough, it will crack open her mind and her brain will pour out all over the walls. The keys click loudly. All her life, ever since she was a young girl, she has been told that she is a beautiful crier, that even in the climax or wake of her most painful moments, she expels them into magic. Funny because it seems to be that she is in a state of tears more frequently than not, and she supposes it is a good thing then that she does not cry ugly, that at least her depression is beautiful. Are you depressed? She blinks, and within the span of that blink, she is removed from her home office, sucked into a horrible place. She gasps for breath, but a layer comes down over her mouth, blocking the airflow. The plastic bag is stretched across her face, and as she writhes, she realizes it is stretched across her entire body as well, a foreign skin forcing her into a cocoon from which she will never bloom. Are you depressed? That metallic voice asks again. What? Please, please let me go, she cries out, squirming like a snake trapped under a boot. The added heat from her fear mixes in with the bright light blazing down on her trapped body. Are you depressed? She stops squirming. Her body lies still except for her chest, which heaves up and down trying to catch a breath despite the airway being cinched off. Yes, she responds. Can you hear the bell chime? She feels sweat drip down her temple, slither into her hair, and ride the strands like a slide until it, ring, falls onto the plastic with a quiet plop. Ring! Yes. She hears a clash against metal like claws digging into steel. Her chest is struck with a vibrating force. It's burrowing under her skin. She cries out in pain, sweat stinging her eyes, blinding her. Please, please, she, ring, sobs. Please, just let me die. Can you hear the bell chime? Ring, please, just kill me. Another force strikes her spine, turning her vertebrae into jelly. Those roots return. Only now they feel like snakes, curling through her veins and thrashing about from the constriction. She wails, ring, blood-curdling pain pouring out from her center as she begs for release, for death. Please, ring, please. Her shallow breath makes it difficult to speak as the snakes in her spine bite down on the backs of her lungs. Please, I'm begging you to just kill. Can you hear the... She jerks upright in her seat, one hand still on the keys of her computer and the other against her chest. She gasps for breath, sweat soaking her clothes and clumping her hair into thick ropes. She searches her home office, curled up in her chair like a woman in fear of the mice skittering beneath. There is a dull throbbing in her back, a phantom pain. The document on her computer screen still has the few words she wrote before she blacked out, but something has changed. Or moved. She glances in horror at the space next to her computer. The poster is back, pasted in the place it was before she crumpled it up and tossed it into the bin. It's laid out flat despite the creases. The eyes strain to see her from this angle. The smile looks all the more grotesque and deformed, a fleshy U. Its lips part and the photograph begins to pulsate up and down with laughter. Laughter she can now hear despite its low register. She pushes away from the desk with a yelp. The legs of her chair screech in protest across the wooden floorboards, and she stands, nearly knocking the chair over. The poster watches her reaction, releasing a few more chuckles, before its black eyes rotate in their sockets toward the window of her office. Hung on that window, blocking the rays of sunlight in a rectangular shadow, is another poster, a new one in the same format. There are a few discrepancies between the two, the first discrepancy being the portrait. There is no evil depiction, no evil twin with sharp features and a thirst for blood. Instead, there is the opposite. The corners of her, its mouth are turned downward into an awful sob, its eyes drowning in tears like they're submerged in an ocean of suffering. It pleads with her. Such pain. She feels an awful familiarity tickle her stomach. The second discrepancy is the words. Underneath the photograph, it states, "Found, but getting rid of me won't be so easy." She reaches for the poster, expecting to feel the glass from her window, but comes to the horrifying discovery that the sign was posted from the inside. She whirls around, but her office is empty. "Dexter?" she calls out. Her throat trembles. "Anyone?" There is no response. She looks back at the poster, rips the page down, and clutches it in her hands. Now she is staring out the window, meeting her reflection in another trance. Another moment of fear-induced paralysis. Her mind races, trying to grasp onto an explanation that does not exist, that will never explain how these two sets of eyes are looking at her with patient expectation. She is losing it, either awake or asleep, in her mind or in reality. From the hallway behind her comes a soft ring. Her bottom lip quivers and her eyes feel as though they are sinking into her face. From her hallway, she hears the bell chime, and slowly, despite her frown, her reflection curls into a horrible smile.